Evening, everybody. Firstly, of course, I have to do not have to, I like to do the acknowledgement that we live and work in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We recognise the treaties of peace and friendship
That's a
and the
great
Mi'kmaq
point.
as the past, present,
Make
and
sure
future
I'm
caretakers of
above.
this
Our
land,
camera's
and for
off.
this
Is
we
that
give
okay
you
with everyone?
thanks.
Yes.
If you can all make sure you're muted, please, it would be most appreciated. Because my computer skills are legendary and I am really good at getting it wrong. But anyway, couple of notes to start with. I'm Tony Millard, the president of the NSBS, and hopefully you can see me as well. No, you can't. Stupid machine. That's better. Now you can see me. Well,
We're
spring
on.
migration is slowly starting, and I, for one, cannot wait to see and hear our returning birds. It's been a long, miserable, soul-destroying winter, to be truthful. Anyway, quick update on the Swallow Nest Box project. The NSBS has received or is receiving some funding from Nature Nova Scotia for this project, and we are rolling out a number of swallow nest box building projects around the province. More details are to come. The first one is going to be on the 1st of April up at Shubenacadie Wildlife Park. Details are on the Facebook page, website, etc. You please must pre-register for that. There's only 20 slots, and you'll get to build a swallow nest box, which could be used for the birds, and you're going to get to keep it as well. But that's ongoing, and more information will be coming out shortly. What else have we got happening? This weekend we have James Hurtle's uh, Blanche field trip. You never know what the heck you're going to find out in the Blanche Peninsula. You do need to pre-register with James for that, and that is this Saturday starting at Sable River, I do believe. It's going to be quite exciting. Oh, Clyde River, my boss lady is telling me. And don't forget the out of town weekend is the 6th and 7th of June this year based on Briar Island. It is booking up fast, but there's still room for a few more folks. Most of the trip leaders are now all in place and more details will be going out shortly. Anyway, over to tonight's star turn. Mark Dennis is a well-known local birder who travels worldwide in his birding pursuits, accompanied by his wife Sandra. Their most recent exotic quest for birds was in Kenya. Kenya is one of the most exciting countries for birding, as well as big game and small game, of course. So we're welcome this evening to hear all about their big trip. Heck, 450 to 700 birds on a trip out there. That's quite something. Mark has a similar accent to myself, but he does support the wrong soccer team, but they're doing better than my lot this year. So anyway, Mark, over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Tony. I'll just point out that I have a more refined accent than you, but we'll press on. Welcome, everybody, to Bird Safari Kenya. A bunch of photos and waffle about our 2024 trip to Kenya. First of all, I'd like to mention that this was an organised trip using a company called Bird Finders, which are a British company. Now, we don't normally do organised birding trips, but the logistics of the thing meant that it was far easier for us to be taken everywhere and taken care of than us attempt to do the same sort of program. The pros is that everything is done for you, and it really does make for a smooth trip. The people taking you around know where all the birds are. And it's also very good for the Kenyan economy. The cons are that you're with people you've met before and you might not always get on with them. So, to the first slide, getting ready to go to Kenya. We have all the essentials there, binoculars, camera, a couple of books and a hat. And also I would mention YouTube has been an important resource. In the months leading up to the trip, we spent a lot of hours watching YouTube videos, familiarizing ourselves with some of the species we might see. I said it's a UK company, and part of the tour package was that you flew London to Nairobi and back. So we had to make our way from Halifax to London, which is quite easy. You don't have to do any driving, somebody does it for you. We stayed overnight in London, and then the next morning we assembled with the other tour participants and caught the flight to Nairobi. We didn't get into Nairobi until into the evening, so we couldn't get any birding done that day. So the only checklist I got in was from the airport window. Things like red kite, common buzzard, and all the other things you might see from the London airport. We ended up at the Boma Hotel, which is in downtown Nairobi. Very comfortable, ready for the fun and games the next day. Naturally, we were at first light and out in the garden of the hotel, checking off a few birds. I think we probably had 6 or 7 live birds just from the patio, and we got ready to board the Toyota Land Cruisers, which were to be our home effectively for the next 15 days. So there on the screen, you can see one of them. It's an extended version of the Land Cruiser. It seats 6 very comfortably. An important thing about going on safari with a company is pack soft bags because, as you can see, everybody has to get their gear into the back. These things also have a pop-up roof, which you may have seen on YouTube videos. There'll be a picture later on showing exactly what that is. But I have to say it was a very comfortable ride all the way round. That's despite the fact that they advertise any visit to Africa in one of these as giving you an African massage. So this is our route around Kenya. Quite an ambitious route in many ways, and some of the distance were quite great. We started off at the Boma and then we went up to Lake Navasha Country Club via a couple of different sites on the way. So we'll move along there smartly. This is the Mango Swamp. I'm not going to show an awful lot of habitat photos because it's either dry or it's wet. But this was a first stop and a great introduction to some of the birds and the bird families that we were going to be seeing on our tour. I think we spent just over an hour there. I don't know how many species we got, but probably came away with 20 to 30 lifers. One of them was this, the Bagel weaver. As you can see from the slide, this was the first of 25 species of weaver. Some of them are quite easy, some of them are a little bit tricky. Luckily, we were being led by Washington Washira, who is one of the top Kenyan bird guides. He was ably assisted by Winston, whose second name I can't fully remember. And between them, they got us around Kenya and got us to see all these birds. This little fella's a cardinal woodpecker, about the size of a downy woodpecker, and it often seemed to be the case. This was the only individual that we saw on the entire trip. So it was pure luck that I happened to turn around and say, "Hey, I've got a woodpecker here." I didn't know which one it was because there are 2 or 3 similar. And lo and behold, cardinal woodpecker on the trip list. And there was a few shorebirds and ducks there, including this beautiful 3-banded plover, which is really a stunning little shorebird. Right, so after the hour or so there, we pressed on, and we went to a woodland site, which was a scout camp with one of the most interesting lavatories I've ever seen. The idea was that we would take a lunch there and we do a little walk along a couple of woodland trails, and it proved to be very productive, including seeing things like this on Hunter's cisticola. Now, cisticola, it's up to you how you pronounce it. It really is. Part of the route took us alongside the Great Rift Valley, and this is one of the lookouts. And tourists often stop and take a look out at the fantastic view there. But be warned, if you do, expect people to want to sell you a souvenir. Also at the forest site, we had the first of 21 species of sunbird. This is an eastern double-collared sunbird, as you can see. Some of them are a bit tricky, but most of them are pretty much self-explanatory when you look at them. And we also got our first animal, a mantle guariza, sat up in the trees looking miserable and wondering what all these white people were doing wandering about around it. So we pressed on to a place called Kinangot, and we were looking for the endemic sharp's longclaw. On the way there, we picked up a guy called Simon. He was a local guide, and the company that had organised this for bird finders are called Sisticola Birding, and they employ local guides all around Kenya. In fact, they've got a guide training program, and we'll meet one of their guides a little later on. And these people, they basically jump in the transport with you. point out birds as you go because they know the sites very well, get you to the site, find the bird you're looking for, and then you drop them off back in town and carry on your way. So the Kinongot Plateau there, that's about as much as there is left. Basically one quite large field, and this Sharp's longclaw, being an endemic, is something a tour group is always going to want to see. And we did, but we didn't have fabulous views. Mostly it was flight views, but it was nice to potter around the field and bump into different Kenyan species like this African sacred ibis, which became a very familiar bird during our time there. In Australia, you call this a bin chicken, but there they've not quite cottoned on to stealing food from public bins. And Cape Robin chats were another common species that we kept bumping into. Usually a bird that you heard singing in the morning and on most of the little tracks that we ventured down away from the desert areas. And these beautiful birds, grey crowned cranes. So we were looking at the Sharp's long claw as they kept disappearing behind a tuft of grass, and then this pair just glided into the pond next to the field, and one of them started dancing. I think you'll agree they really are quite a spectacular bird. Another spectacular bird, well, no, not really. African dusky flycatcher. It's about the nearest thing they've got in Kenya to an empid. And here we got our second cysticular species, sorry. We saw 13 species in total. These are a grassland bird, and some of them are very hard to see. You're more likely just to hear them, although they do respond to playback. And whether you agree with it or not, tour leaders often use playback to make sure the customers get some sort of view. And streaky seed eater, which is definitely not a purple finch. And I think this species just shows you that around the world, there are very, very similar species which have evolved to do exactly the same thing. This thing eats seeds, as you can imagine, just like our purple finches do. Okay, so we got to Lake Navasha Country Club. Late afternoon, it was still light. There was a few birds around, but not many. They were all settling in for the night. And we dropped our bags in the room and got ready to go for lunch, for supper. We were told that we would be getting a guard to escort us to supper. We didn't really know why because it was just like a hotel in a country park, if you like. There weren't really any animals there when we got there. But when we looked outside, there was these hippos grazing on the lawn right outside the room. And as you can imagine, bumping into your first hippo in that context is quite surprising. Anyway, a Maasai warrior in full Maasai warrior gear came down armed with a stick that was about a foot and a half long, which I don't think would have repelled a hippo. Anyway, he was very good and he escorted us to supper. We had supper, and then on the way back, we got a different guard. He was a bit more flamboyant and he insisted that we should walk onto the lawn and start taking selfies with the hippos. We politely declined and retired to our room for the night. So this is the room. I'm just going to show you one room. I won't show you every hotel room, but basically very comfortable. It's got an ensuite toilet, obviously, mosquito netting if you need it, but we've had barely an insect flying around us. And every room has got a tropical house gecko. The next morning, we went out to breakfast and passed these black-faced vervets, and like the caption says, it really wasn't that cold. We pressed on to breakfast and got to know our fellow guests a little bit better before heading on for our boat trip on Lake Navasha. The tour had got 3 boat trips scheduled. This was to be the first one, and we needed to get there earlier because the weather can change and any of the lakes get choppy. The same thing applies for every lake. Around the grounds of where we were going to sail from, this superb starling. And this is something we'd seen many times on a YouTube video. And so it was nice to actually get one in the flesh like that. And a few more birds around, a Rupel starling. And then we got in the boat. So as you can see, safety first, we've all got life jackets. And the boats were pretty good condition generally. The boatmen friendly. You can see that they were feeling the cold. They got woolly hats on. And we set off around the edges of the lake. and out to an island where there was a number of animals which had been placed there to make a movie out of Africa and never taken back to the mainland. They can't be really because the lakes are all rising due to a change in the tectonic plates. So you see dead trees all over the place where the lakes have flooded them out. All around with these Egyptian geese. Some people will be familiar with them, some not. Very noisy goose, very territorial, and very good at defending their young. And in the margins, we had these African black crakes, which are exactly as they sound, little skulking birds, a bit like a Virginia rail type bird, creeping about the vegetation. And a giant kingfisher, one of several kingfisher species we saw. That's the largest kingfisher in the world. So this is an African fish eagle. We saw 46 species of hawk and falcon. Now the boatmen who take people out on the lake all the time have become friendly with these eagles and they throw fish out for them to come and take. We've seen it on videos many, many times, so we thought, here we go, cameras ready. That shot of the eagle plunging into the lake. I don't know how many times they threw the fish out, but the eagle only came in at a little look once and went back to its perch and didn't want to play. As we headed back in the margins, we came across a Goliath heron, which is, I think, the biggest heron on Earth, maybe second biggest after great billed heron. And in the water, we had white-breasted cormorants. Now, these are supposed to be the same species as our great cormorant, but they look like this, so I think maybe not. And of course, the hippos that were on the lawn the night before were all now in the water, and these were just bobbing about not too far from the docking where we got on and off the boats. So we moved on from Lake Navasha, piling into the van, and we were on our way to the famous Masai Mara. We stopped partway there to get a drink and an ice cream and use the toilet facilities, which were all excellent. It was a really nice stop and quite birdy. The utility pole just in the parking lot had this mountain grey woodpecker. And nearby, where we were eating our lunch, we had these Hildebrandt starlings, which are quite stunning birds. And hopping around our feet were these speckled fronted weavers. And in the bush, just by the road, in one of the bushes, was an Usambiro barbet, which is currently a form of Darno's barbet, but they're talking about splitting it, and they are readily identifiable. So, refreshed, we set off for the Masai Mara in a state of excitement. We weren't going to have very long that afternoon there. We've still got a ways to go. And we're barreling down the road when our driver, John, shouts something and we stop. And it's important to remember that although the drivers are the drivers, they're also naturalists as well. And our guy was particularly sharp when it came to picking things up at the side of the road. And the way the thing worked with the Land Cruisers was we were expected to mingle, change Land Cruiser, go with different people, get to know everybody. What naturally happened is that we formed two camps. Our camp was a very friendly camp, I have to say, and a very birdy camp. And the other one, they tended to be more professional trip goers, at least two or three of them, and a couple of proper birders there as well, as I call them. Anyway, that's how it works. So we stopped at the side of the road to see our only double-banded courser of the entire trip. We pushed onto the Masai Mara and we had to get our permits sorted out. For various red tape reasons, the next day we had to hammer across the Masai Mara and get to another station to buy new permits at 10 o'clock. It was really a bit silly. Anyway, you can imagine the excitement. We go through the gate. We've managed to shrug off all the ladies selling Chinese made hippos and things, and we're driving along the road slowly, and we see our first spotted hyena. And he put on a good show for us. He walked across the road, then he decided to go and hide in a culvert that went under the road. So this is a view that we got our first sort of taste of the Masai Mara. It doesn't quite show you how it is. I've got a better view later, but I thought, one with the back end of a zebra in would give you a nice context. And here is a zebra, or zebra, whichever way you want to say it. This is plain zebra. It's very common on the Masai Mara, herds of them all over the place. And this is a southern ground hornbill. And again, we only saw, there was actually two birds here, but this is the only time we saw southern ground hornbill. And this is a big bird, bigger than a Canada goose, and they tend to walk around digging up termite mounds and things like that. On the smaller side, there was this purple grenadier, which is a sparkling little finch, really, really very pretty. Naturally, we saw animals, and you can't really miss the elephants. They're all over the place. But when you see them in the wild, as opposed to seeing them in the zoo, they take on a different quality. And of course, we saw necky horses. These are giraffes, as everybody knows. These are Maasai giraffes. And if you remember, the pattern is sort of quite raggedy and indistinct on them. You'll see later when we see the other types of giraffe, why they're all potentially different species. So on most of the animals that we saw were oxpeckers, red-billed, like this one, or yellow-billed, like this one. And while the oxpeckers do a sterling job in getting rid of ticks and fleas and whatever's crawling all over the animals, they also, if the animal gets injured, keep the wound open because they feed on the blood. So not a nice side. And this one is the most dangerous animal in Africa, they say. But personally, I think if you're out on your own in the Masai Mara, every animal's dangerous. And there you can see it's got a yellow-billed oxpecker sat on its head. Now, this is a common impala. Several types of antelope dotted around, keeping the big cats occupied. And here's a black rhino. Again, the only black rhino that we saw. And we've been having lunch, and we were picking our way back to the main part of the Mara when we got a radio message saying that there was a rhino just along the way. And this this was out right in the open. Normally they're in treed areas so they can go away basically. So this felt very exposed. We parked about maybe 250, 300 meters away from it, keeping a good distance, keeping an eye on it. And you could tell by the drivers that they were very weary because it started to get agitated. And as soon as it did, we got out of there and left it to its own devices. As you can see, it's been covered in mud, so it had probably just been and found a mud wallow somewhere. These are warthogs. These are all over the place. Interesting little animals. And these are Thompson's gazelles. These were the smaller of the gazelles, extremely fast. And again, a big cat favorite. This is a secretary bird. This is actually a raptor, a hawk. And they walk everywhere and they jump on frogs and especially snakes. And they're called secretary birds because if you look at the neck there, those black plumes, a couple of centuries ago, the secretaries used to use plumes to write, and that's how they reckon they get their name. Now, this is a Fisher's sparrowlark, so this was a lark species just running about on the sandy soil. And this is a serval. So before I carry on, our next night, our second night in the Masai Mara was in a different place. We'd raced over the Mara, we got our permits, and we were told then that we would be spending the time looking for cats. The idea being it's a birding tour, but they're not going to say, well, we're not going to look at the animals because of course everybody wants to. So we pick up the permits, we turn around and we start out. And the first cat we come across is this serval. Really superb species. And they don't see them very often. The guys are saying it's not a regular species for them. And this one took a look at us and then just strolled right past us. And then, of course, we found a jaguar. Sorry, a jaguar, a leopard. A jaguar's on the ring. A leopard. And this was a bit of the tour that we didn't like. The reason being, we didn't feel we gave it enough air. I mean, it's great seeing these animals, and we've all got binoculars, so we would have been fine like 100 meters away. But it was obvious that the drivers have been conditioned to get the customers the best experience, if you like. And I felt we pestered it, and I said so as well. Um, so, you take what you get, and we saw a leopard, but it felt a little uncomfortable there. Now, we've been going across the Mara and staying at another place on the other side called Mara West. And again, we had a Maasai supposedly coming to fetch us for supper, but he didn't show up. So we waited for him, and when he obviously wasn't going to come, we set out on our own until we started hearing laughing hyenas quite close to the camp, and we scuttled back. So we're still on the Mara. We're still looking at cats. This is a cheetah. It's a female cheetah, and she's got two cubs somewhere buried, but she wasn't moving and showing us where they were. She sat under this tree at range, and it was getting quite warm. And then we came across some lions, and these were super, super cute. So that's mother. They're not very old, and she would walk maybe 10 meters and they trot behind her, and then they just flop down on the floor, and she'd have to wait until they got their strength back. And she walked straight past us, and again, never batted an eyelid that people were there looking at her. And of course, nobody likes to miss the Nile grass rat. Okay, so back at the Mara West, one of the guys said, "Hey, you've got to come and see what I've got on my tent." And when we got there was this foot-long stick insect. It really was quite spectacular. So this is the Mara view from the other side, from the Ulululu or something similar plateau. I can't pronounce it. As you can see, it really is quite fantastic. So after we'd done the cat day and we'd gone back and we had another night in the Mara West, we were told, right, today we're going all out to get all the birds that we need to get while we're here before we make the journey north. One of the species we came across was this lilac-breasted roller, and this is often a bird that people find very memorable about a trip to Africa because they are quite memorable and extremely photogenic. We also found this dark chanting goshawk, and one of the things that it got is a snake in its talons. Um, we don't know what snake species it is, but it was the only snake we saw on the entire trip. Part of the day was taken up with having a picnic at what they call the picnic tree, and if you look on Google Earth, it's called the picnic tree. Here, it's very open all around, so you can see if any predators are heading your direction. Because normally on the Mara, you don't get out of the vehicle because you'll get eaten. And while we were there, a Maasai ostrich went past. This is the common ostrich, but the Maasai race. And you see that I spelt Maasai correctly. Most people spell it Masai, but that's the correct spelling. We also had this redneck spurfowl. Came to investigate whatever that thing is on the floor and hung around for any crumbs that we might leave. Going back on the tracks, we came across this black-breasted snake eagle. As you can guess by the name, it eats snakes. And a very spectacular greater blue-eared starling. Also, we came across a couple of bustards. Now, bustards are like basically chickens, a bit bigger, and they live on the open plains. And there you can see the two different species: the black belly, obviously with the black belly, and the white belly with the white belly. And we came across a water thickney. We I think we had three different species of thickney on the trip: water, Senegal, and spotted. So this showed quite nicely and was a tick for most of the people on the trip. A grey kestrel there, and you can see it's been eating a locust. Another nice spectacular falcon, and a rosy-throated longclaw. So these are scurrying about the grasslands like a pipit or a lark, and quite a spectacular bird. Now I'm aware that I'm going fairly quick, but I have got quite a lot of things to show you, so that's why I'm keeping the pace up. And I understand I take questions at the end, so if you've got anything you want to ask me, you can do that then. This is a red-fronted tinkerbird at the Mara West location. Singing away in the morning, they do a monotonous do 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 do. Quite entertaining. Now, I think this is they do a little excursion while you're on the Mara because the Serengeti becomes the Masai Mara, and the border between Kenya and Tanzania is like this trig point. So naturally, everybody wanted to go to Tanzania, so we did, and naturally, I did a checklist for Tanzania. So when you look at my map on eBird, you'll see that Tanzania is coloured in. I don't have many species, but it really doesn't matter. And as we made our way back for the last night, before the following day's big journey, we passed a few more spotted hyenas. These are young ones. So the next day, we were told we were going to be traveling a long way, probably about 6 hours on difficult roads. We set off, and the first thing we came across was this flat-necked chameleon trying to cross the road. And to be honest, it was a real highlight. It was a superb animal. And luckily, Washington Mashira is Kenya's expert on reptiles, and he was able to give us a full roadside talk about it. And then he lifted it across the road and put it in a tree to safety. So we picked our way up this very, very bumpy road um, on our way to Lake Victoria, passing a few birds, stopping when we could. And one of the birds we saw was this nice European bee-eater. And when you're traveling in Kenya, you go through all sorts of different towns and villages, and this is a pretty much a roadside scene. You know, people selling fruit and stuff, and a little market going off and all that sort of thing. Funny little taxis around and things. It's quite fascinating. And these are all taken. This was taken from a speeding truck. So that's the first part of the thing. We do travelogues for any of the trips we do. They're in print and ebooks. And the first part is called Caribou Kenya and available from Amazon. So we overnighted in a little town near Lake Victoria at the Sarova Imperial Hotel. And it was only downtown hotel that we stayed in while we were out birding. Then we jumped in the trucks, went down to the waterfront, and spent quite a lot of time making our way to the boats that were going to take us out onto Lake Victoria. I mentioned earlier about the weather changing in the afternoon. With Lake Victoria, it's particularly important because it's basically, well, it's a great lake. It's huge. It's bordered by at least Uganda and Tanzania as well as Kenya. And so we took this road that led to where the boat was going to go from, or the boat's going to go from, and we picked up these birds like this Leicester striped swallow and an unladen barn swallow. At the roadside there was hammercops, which are a type of heron, and then malachite kingfisher perched for us right by the road. And we also saw this fisher's lovebird, the first lovebird of any sort of species for us. Now, lovebirds in Kenya, in some areas, have suffered from hybridization. Um, and we asked Washington whether or not this was a hybrid, and he felt that the birds in this area were genuine fisher's lovebirds, which is good enough for me because he's the expert. eBird doesn't agree with him, but over this particular thing, I'd go with Washington. Either way, it's quite a stunning little lovebird. We also saw the not so stunning swamp flycatcher, oddly enough in a swamp, and an eastern grey plantain eater. Again, I think this might have been the only one we saw. Quite a largish bird, part of the Turco family. So we eventually got to Lake Victoria, and that's the boat. And we were given the safety briefing, such as it is, and told that the boats are specially designed to let water in, so when the fishermen are using them, they can wash their catch. No, they don't. Boats are not designed to sink. Anyway, we went out onto the lake and trundled around. There was a couple of species we were wanting to get from the lake, and as we went along, this African pied wagtail rode with us. And we also bumped into this yellow-billed stork and a pied kingfisher, which was one of, I don't know how many, 30 or 40 kingfishers that we passed. Now, the bird we were looking at was looking for was a Papyrus gonolek, and so we had to nudge into big stands of papyrus at the lakeside. The other boat were fine doing it, but they didn't see the gonolek. We got in and we did see the gonolek, but our skipper was very good at getting tangled in fishing nets, and he managed to get tangled in the same net twice. Right by the lake margin and a marshy bit was an African open bill, which is a kind of stork, believe it or not. Now, I was missing gulls. I always miss gulls, and I was hoping that there might be a few gulls out on Lake Victoria, and I could see these floating structures way out, covered in white birds, and I figured there's got to be some gulls there. So we motored out to them, and they were absolutely covered in whiskered terns. But in between the whiskered terns, there was a few white-winged terns, and this bird has got a special context for Nova Scotia birders because we had one, I think it was a couple of years ago. We didn't see it. Um, only Mike saw it, Mike Jones, but all the same, this is what they look like in a winter plumage. So after fun and games there, we went to a shopping mall and bought ice creams, and then we drove off to a place called Rondo Retreat Centre, which is in Kakamega Forest. It's the place where all the birders stop, and it's a very nice place, very civilized. If you want to, you can sit in lawn chairs and take tea. But we were a birding group, so we had to bird. And part of the birding at Kakamega is getting into what is a remnant of a forest which once covered all of Central Africa. On the trails, that's the typical sort of trail, and this trail led to a village, and these ladies were going backwards and forwards collecting firewood. We were seeing a few birds, like this grey-throated barbet, which has got these weird tufts. I don't really know what they're for. And one of our people came in at lunch and said that they'd seen a nightjar. They'd flushed a nightjar. I'd finished my lunch, so I went out to have a look, and I managed to find it again. And we got it pinned down, sitting under some vegetation. And then there was another tour party in the place, and we had a long debate about what species it was because it was an out of range square-tailed nightjar. So this was a quite a bonus bird for the trip. This is a joyful greenbull, which is a great name for it because they make a nice noise and you can see them. Most of the green bulls in Kenya you barely see. Um, if the tour leader shouts, "I've got a green bull of some description," unless you're with him, you're probably not going to see it because they're extremely difficult. And they soon became like the butt of the joke. Nobody really wants to care about green bulls. So one afternoon, we were back out on the trails again, and we were walking a road. We were looking for a beta species, and these olive baboons were sat by the side of the road, and they really didn't care about us. And Washington didn't seem to be worried about them, so we didn't care about them. And we wondered what they were waiting for. Turned out it was sugarcane time, and this tractor showing all this sugarcane recently harvested came along and tossed a few to the baboons, which enjoyed it, and a few of the group tried it as well. Especially the guide, he seemed to be delighted to be getting some sugarcane. So we did a short walk at Kakamega just before we were going to go, and so I'm going to show a couple of the birds that we saw from that walk. This is a great blue terraco. This is one of the species you really want to see. And in the grounds of the Rondo retreat, we had a nesting crowned eagle. But when you looked at the nest, which was right in the middle of the lawn, all you see was the top of a bird's head. But they reckon this bird is one from the previous year, which has just been hanging around and not yet ventured out on its own. Okay, so we've finished at the Rondo retreat. Now, I condensed the Rondo information greatly because we didn't take that many photos because you're in quite dark, dense forest. And besides, later on in the trip, there's places that is more open with better photos. So our next port of call was to be the Soy Safari Lodge on Lake Baringo. And Lake Baringo is another lake that has been suffering from rising water, certainly more than the other lakes, and you'll see the sort of effect it's had when we get there. But on the way, we did a roadside stop and we came up with this white-crested Turako. We got to Lake Baringo, I think, late afternoon, and it was baking because it's a very dry area. I mean, there's green vegetation, but it really is dry area. Now, Washington at this point took everybody aside and said that here we're going to be meeting Maureen, who is going to be our local guide, and also you need to be aware that all the vegetation wants to kill you. And when you see the vegetation, you realize what it means. Everything has got huge thorns and will stick in you. Now, at this point in the trip, we'd been in different lodges and different places. And earlier on, I'd had a slight disagreement, if you like, feeling a bit sort of stomachy. So I'd popped an Imodium. And then a couple of days later, it seemed to creep back, and you don't want that sort of thing bothering you while you're out in the field. So I popped an Imodium. Um, so by this point, I'm good to go. We got the three-banded courser thanks to Maureen, and that's Maureen there. Look, and she's one of their I think one of their stars actually because she was very good, very personable, and took us around to see a lot of birds. And here you can see some of the group looking at one of the nightjars. You see what Maureen does. She lives in the Baringo area. She goes out and she finds different birds for the tour group when they arrive, and of course you tip these guides a bit as well, and they make a bit of money, and it's good for the environment, and it's good for them to have this sort of career. So we're looking at a few nightjars here. There's a slender-tailed nightjar that Maureen has found us, and a European nightjar that Maureen has found us, and a blue-naped mousebird that was easy to find, really. So this is the hotel. This is the Soy Safari Lodge, and this we've seen videos of this. Was a really lovely place. Sadly, you can see how high the water has got. Certainly deep enough for a crocodile to swim right round the hotel. And my little problem developed. The next day, the boat was going out on the lake, and I wasn't able to make it. And Sandra, and I have no idea why, felt she should stay with me. Anyway, so we just did a bit of birding, quiet, gentle birding, a dashing distance around the grounds, which weren't very, very large. This is a speckled pigeon, and if you want to know what speckled Jim is, you need to watch Blackadder Goes Forth. In the restaurant, because the hotel was still functioning, we just had to climb over water. There was these big epauletted fruit bats roosting in the ceiling. They were great to watch, but don't eat the currants, raisins. And as we sat in the bar, this huge Nile crocodile came in to visit. On the roofs, there were these Jackson's hornbills. And in the woods, we had these pearl-spotted owlets, which this was the first one we saw, another Maureen bird. But we did manage to find a few more as the trip went on. Now, Maureen had got a couple of owls pinned down for us, a couple of special owls. So we made our way past the annoyed rock hyrax to see a greyish fish owl, eagle owl, and a spotted eagle owl. Now, the greyish eagle owl was quite straightforward, just a bit of a walk. The spotted eagle owl had a bee's nest in the tree next to it, and we had to scramble up a bit of a rock bank to get a look. I'll leave you to guess who got stung by bees. So this is a lovely view of dawn over Lake Baringo. A phone photo, just take a good photo. So, second part, crack on Kenya. Why crack on Kenya? Well, Washington Mushira, when he wanted to get people going, he would say, "Come on, everybody, we have to crack on." We're moving on now. So we've left Lake Baringo and we're heading to Lake Nakuru, to what was probably the best lodge of them all. But we just weren't there very long at Lake Nakuru. We arrived at roughly midday and set off around the reserve, where we saw the African hoopoe and the red-cheeked cordon bleu. And so we're out birding with the roof up, looking at a honey guide in a woodlot. And then somebody said, "Look behind us," or to the side of us. And there was this magnificent leopard in a tree looking at us. And Chris, who was a medical doctor who was in our van, kept saying, "What are we looking at? What are we looking at?" We say, "In the tree." It was really quite a funny moment. But that for all the birds, that was the one thing that I take back from Kenya. That incredible animal. We saw Rothschild's giraffes. You remember I mentioned about the Maasai giraffe. Well, you can see these are a different pattern completely, and the face is quite different as well. We also saw birds. This beautiful blacksmith lapwing, which was an ambition bird. I had a very few ambition birds. There was this one, and there was uh, a bee-eater, southern carmine bee-eater, and I missed them on the boat trip that I couldn't go to, and we didn't find any more. We also finally had a gull, which was this grey-hooded gull. There was a few around the lake. A very nice kitlets as plover. And there's a few shorebirds taken from the truck because again you can't get out. There are leopards and things. So top left we've got pied avocets, then we've got common ring plover, common greenshank, common sandpiper, wood sandpiper, curlew sandpiper, little stint. It kept us occupied for about an hour and a half by there. It was just really, really good birding. And Lake Nakuru is famous for its flamingos, or it was. Because of the change in water levels, the acidity is changing. All the lakes are sort of forming into to um, more balanced water, I guess you'd say. And the flamingos, which once numbered over 1 million here, have spread out more. And we did see greater and lesser flamingo, and they are both. These are greater flamingos, and these down here are lesser flamingos. But nothing like the million birds that David Attenborough saw when he filmed Life on Earth here. And we got our white rhino, surrounded by cattle egrets. This was one of only two white rhinos we saw. They were both in the same field. And they're called white rhinos, not because they're white, but because they've got wide lips and something was lost in the translation. As we left the park, we saw a nice auger buzzard quite close to us, a yellow-throated longclaw sat right by the van, and a beautiful white-fronted bee-eater. So we spent one night there at the Lion Hill Sarovar, Lake Nakuru, before moving on. But first we had a bit of a journey, and we stopped at a place where we thought we might see a shark's longclaw. I didn't take the camera with me. Sandra took hers, and this bird landed on a rock right next to us. So we got our great view of shark's longclaw. A little further down the road, we stopped for a golden winged sunbird, which was one of the really beautiful sunbirds that we saw, and very local to the area where we were because we were on our way to Mount Kenya. There's Mount Kenya in the distance, and this is the second largest mountain in Africa. And people stop at the Maru Moro River Lodge, which is where we were heading, and then they go to a place 10,000 feet up, a weather station, and like a set-off place so they can hike to the top of the mountain. We weren't going to do that. We were going to drive up the next day to try and pick up one or two special species. The first species we got right as we were signing in, because everybody has to sign a sheet to say they're going in, but weirdly nobody has to sign one to say they're going out. So we got this beautiful red-fronted parrot sat by where we were picking up our permits. Further up the hill, as we picked our way, we came across this Jackson spurfowl. So bear in mind we're heading for 10,000 feet, and we were told that there was a strong population of elephants, which we didn't see, but we could see where they'd been, and also still things like leopards at that altitude. We got to the top to the weather station, and it started to rain quite heavily, so we decided to go off earlier than planned, and we headed to Samburu. Now, Samburu was for us the best place that we went to. It really was quite spectacular. So this is us. We just stopped to use the washrooms by the entrance, and just inside the entrance there in the roof, there were hundreds of these little swift nests, and they were wheeling all over the place. once we got inside the place, just inside the reserve, right by the gatehouse, there we had trees full of white-headed buffalo weavers, while Fisher starlings were hopping all over the place. And I think we had, if I remember right, just as we stopped just inside the door, we had something like 10 lifers in, I don't know, 4 minutes or something. And then we had to pick our way to the lodge, which was the Sopa Samburu. As we went, we came across a Kori bustard, which is the largest bird that can fly in the world. Um, we've been looking for them all over the Mara and not found them, but as soon as we got to Samburu, there we got one. Right by the road, we had these black-faced sand grouse, and this was Samburu all over. We go 100 meters and we stop and we get three lifers. It was just really incredible birding. And one of the species we'd seen many times in videos and wanted to see was the vulturine guinea fowl. And I think you can say this is quite a spectacular bird. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the helmeted guinea fowls all over the roads from time to time. This is a different beast altogether. And that blue colour and that the feathering is just quite impossibly beautiful. In Africa, in the different places, they have what they call the Big Five. We saw the Big Five when we were in the Masai Mara, which is the leopard, the lion, rhino, da da da. And in Samburu, you're looking for a species called a gerenuk, which is a type of impala, but with quite a long neck, and they're able to stand on their hind legs and use their long neck to get a vegetation that other antelopes can't reach. One of the other endemics, the other specialities you're looking at, big five specialities, is Grevy's zebra, which is very much more mule-like than the plain zebra that we saw earlier. And of course, a different giraffe. This time it's reticulated giraffe with very, very neat markings and quite different head pattern. One of them's got a different number of noggins on the head. I can't remember which one it is.
It's the Rothschild.
And a few birds around, a lot of birds around actually. We stopped to have a good look at this brown snake eagle. By the roadside, there were little bee eaters. And this is a golden-bellied starling, one of many, many attractive starlings. This is the only one we saw yet again. And we saw quite a few of these. These are golden pipits, which I think the name gives it away. And we saw more hornbills. This is eastern yellow-billed hornbill, and this was the commonest hornbill in this area. A nice black-capped social weaver. And right outside where we were stopping, this lovely spotted morning thrush sang to us. This is called rufous-tailed scrub robin. In England, where I'm from, as you've probably guessed, this is a mega. This is Rufus bushchat, um, a real mega. So we'd seen it in Israel years ago, just one. So it was really, really good to get a good look at it and have it singing away at us. We came across this Somali bunting, which is, as you can see, is quite a spectacular bird. And a rosy patch bushshrike. In fact, we found quite a few of these. You can see the thorns there, and they tend to like these acacias and get themselves tucked in. A red and yellow barbet speaks for itself. And this is a view of Samburu. Really, really spectacular. It looks green, but it's actually very, very deserty. So we had 2 nights at the Sopa Samburu. The first full day we spent out birding constantly, basically dawn till dusk. This is what the Land Cruiser looks like when you're looking for birds. That's Winston at the front, and then a couple of the birders in there stood. We're looking for Somali ostrich. Our van had already found them, and they were trying to catch up because they talk to each other via radio. This is a white-throated bee-eater, quite a spectacular bee-eater. This is a buff-crested bustard, and this is one of my top 5 birds from the Kenya trip. I thought they were really, really superb. And this is a Somali ostrich. So eventually the other van did catch up with them. So we were one up with them by finding the Somali ostriches, but they managed not to get stuck. And our driver showed great skill and perseverance to get us out when we got bogged down in a large muddy hollow. You see that the Somali ostrich is different from the common ostrich or the Maasai ostrich, and it's got a bluish there and it's got bluish there. And funnily enough, on the way out, we saw about 50. And we kept coming across black-winged kites all over the place. It's a breed in Europe and winter in Africa. Naturally, we saw some more animals. Now, this is a couple of elephants, and it's a phone photo. And I found I got way better definition with the phone than I did with the expensive camera and lens. And this is one of the other big five. This is a Besa oryx. So we did our trip, and we were told to get in the trucks because we were heading to our last night at a place called Castle Forest Lodge, but we were birding our way out of Samburu. We had a little change of personnel because there was a guy called Mike who fell out with the people in the other van, so he had to come to our van, which meant we had to change our rotation system because we rotated inside. And Chris, who liked the back seat, didn't want to be anywhere near this mic, so he wanted a seat at the side. Yada. Anyway, Sandra and I ended up sitting at the back, and it was very bouncy, and I managed to put my back out by the time we got to the gate, which meant I wasn't very mobile. It didn't stop me enjoying martial eagles, though, as well as that Liechtenstein sandgrouse we looked at. And then we moved on to Castle Forest Lodge. I knew that I was going to have mobility problems, and so the scheduled walk that we got there, I wasn't going to be able to do. But I was able to bird around the cabins, and it was a very nice place, and the food was really good. But you're on last day of the trip syndrome, and you're thinking, well, tomorrow, we're going to be back in Nairobi and heading home. So I sat there on the bench with my back killing me, watching pintail whiters and Takaz sunbirds, and one of our favourites, which we've been seeing everywhere, the white-eyed slaty flycatcher. And that was really the end of the trip. Just a word of caution: it's sunny in Africa. Who knew? That's my right hand. I sat by the right window. I got my hand sunburned, and it really bloated up, carrying a lot of water. But it's healed now, and I still can't play the piano, but that doesn't matter. So this is a rehash of where we were. We're now at Castle Forest Lodge, as you can see on the right. We've got to get back to Nairobi, not Livoma, because we're flying out on I think it was 11:30 at night flight or something similar. So the plan was that we would drive back, make a couple of stops, and then we would go to a hotel near the airport, clean up, eat, give the guides and drivers their tips, and then get taken to the airport. Job done. So this is our happy crew, the Bird Finders Kenya tour. I'm sure most of you know me, but I'll say anyway. That's me, that's Sandra, that's Sylvia. I can't remember his name.
Phil.
That's Phil. That's Mike, that's Danny.
Chris.
That's Chris, Ian, John, another John,
Keith.
and Keith. And then at the front, this is John, our driver. Really good lad, got on very well with him. This is Winston, and I'm afraid there's some sad news that not long ago Winston had a brain tumor and died. He was a really lovely fella. And there's Washington, and there's Jackson, the driver of the other truck. So this is what we saw: 564 species. I'm sure you can read that for yourself. I won't keep you up too long because, well. And the third part of the Kenya trip is available in a book. We write in our own inimitable style, tongue in cheek, saying what we see and what we like, and sometimes what we don't like. The ebooks are $2.99. The print books are a bit more expensive, so I'll go ebook if you're going to get one. We also have a YouTube channel where we've got 20 videos from Kenya. There's the address at the top. If you use YouTube, Mark Sandra Dennis 4773 will find our channel. We have birding in Nova Scotia. We have birding in Australia. We have all sorts on there. And I mentioned on the NSBS site, Dominic contacted me and said, could I put a little advertisement at the end of the tour just to make people aware? is intended to run a tour in April 2028. Um, Presumably along similar lines to what we did. I don't know his itinerary. I don't think he does yet. But if you're interested, contact Dominic. Keep an eye on our set tours, and maybe go and experience your own bird safari. And just a final word, I write books. So if you like to read, these books are Nova Scotia Bird of Mysteries. These are Detective Mysteries from Nova Scotia, a bird book. These are some of our other birding travelogues. And this is a book about birding in Nova Scotia, the first 7 years. And then that's one for another year that was really good. And that's the end of the talk. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mark. We'll have some questions in a second. I got a couple of questions myself as well. Very important. Did you ascertain the actual velocity of that swallow when you were there?
No, we weren't able to because it was unladen, you see.
Ah, but could it
And
handle a coconut?
it wasn't actually moving.
Yeah, and it wasn't moving. You know,
It was on a wire.
Well, okay, just checking.
So the
Yeah.
velocity was zero.
And what the heck is it with the plants there? Does everything have huge killer thorns on it or what?
yeah. That was a pretty as well. The place where we were warned that the plants will kill you was a pretty tricky place. I think we all got the odd spine in us. But
They would go through. I was wearing hiking boots, and they went right through the sole of the hiking boot. You couldn't avoid them.
You can
They
keep
were
that
just
then.
astonishing.
yeah, it was fun place.
And an actual bird-related question. Warblers?
Uh, a few black
Yeah, I
caps
mean,
and
I'm,
that
I'm
sort.
just surprised. I didn't know, but yeah, I mean,
Well, it was November, so the
yeah.
bulk of the migratory warblers weren't there because they tend to migrate south and then they drift south through Africa and then they turn around and go north. So we did see some warblers, but not that many really.
Okay, just curious. I mean, just so used to seeing them in season. Anyway, what questions have folks got for Mark and Sandra? Just unmute and talk away, but please don't talk over yourselves.
Can I hear tumbleweed?
I'm going to have a quick look in the chat. I'm going to try and look in the chat.
Was just gonna say, wonderful presentation. So cool to see your trip and all the birds that you saw. We saw some of the same birds when we went to South Africa, so it was pretty neat to see at least a little bit of overlap with what you guys saw.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, South Africa's a destination we'd like to go to for sure. But yeah, some of those species are found the length and breadth. Go on.
Fascinating stuff. I mean, just the colours alone. I mean, heck.
Yeah, that's something you do get. Lots of spectacular colour. And the people were absolutely lovely. At one place, we just stopped by the side of the road and ate lunch because you've got to think the drivers need a break as well. And there were some local kids. They were coming up, but they wouldn't quite come close enough. So I walked down with them and sat down with them, and and you're fist bumping and trying to communicate. And most of the people there speak English actually, so that was really nice. And yeah, everybody we met was really very nice.
Just looked quite spectacular, to be truthful. I mean, really spectacular.
I would recommend it. I mean, we it wasn't really an ambition as such, but when the possibility came up and we took it, we look back on it and we think it was probably the very best vacation we've ever had.
So you'd put that over, your Costa Ricas, your El Salvadors, Ecuadors, etc.
Um, well, it's more recent. We enjoyed Australia as well because we were, self-contained, did everything ourselves. But yeah, it was an experience. I mean, guided tours aren't for everybody, that's for sure. But we're getting on a bit. We need to be taken care of in places. So it was just good to have everything done for us just this one time. Although I wouldn't be worried about driving around Kenya myself. I've driven all over the place. It wouldn't faze me at all.
Cool. Yeah, and As you can see, there's a picture of a range of your books as well, and you never know if you're an NS birdie, you might even spot yourself heavily disguised in one of those books.
No. The characters in my book bear no similarity whatsoever to any Nova Scotia birders.
If I ever get a tattoo, it will be a frigate bird, by the way, Mark.
Right, okay.
If I ever get one. That's an in-joke between Mark and myself and one or two others. But yeah, any further questions from anybody at all?
There's a question in the chat from somebody.
How do you do that?
What's an unladen barn swallow?
If that's one from Mark about the unladen barn swallow, it's a Monty Python reference from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, involving crossing a bridge and being thrown into a big hole, is the best way of putting it. So just a Pythonism, the English sense of humour from Mr. Dennis and one or two.
Yes, Mark Cranford's asking whether it was an unladen barn swallow as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's where I got the question.
Somebody's asked how long it was.
Yeah, for JD, we were on the ground for 16 nights, basically. So, and it was hellishly expensive. I will say that now. But it's only a pension. Who cares? You know, we can, and this is for the English people, we can eat bread and lard for the rest of the year, sort of thing.
God, my cardiologist would not want me having lard.
But yeah, what can I say? It was just a fantastic trip. I mean, you've seen a very, very small fraction of the photos that we actually have, and I tried to make it more visual, you know, for people because you enjoy looking at pictures of nice birds, but there are a lot of pictures of other birds in there as well. And using those vehicles, they're really, really great for when you're somewhere where you can't get out. You just drive along and stop, and then the birds just appear. It's really magnificent.
One from JD, did eBird trip report?
It's maybe.
Yeah, there's an eBird trip report for sure. And it's a public one, so, you know, feel free.
That is quite spectacular. Yeah, quite spectacular. I'm still in awe of some of the plumage on those birds. I really am.
Yeah. If you want to read a good Kenya trip report, look at Dominique's, which is on Discord. It's a three-parter. Now, Dominique, being younger and possibly slightly less sensible than I am, opted for going camping in the wild with his friend and went all over Kenya, saw a lot of birds in Kenya. And his trip report is really well written and really enjoyable. I think if you went to Kenya with Dominic, you wouldn't be disappointed.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be camping in Kenya anytime soon.
No, well, I don't think he'd run a trip like that. But for his purposes, he has a friend that lives there, and they targeted species, and it's just a really enjoyable, full of the joys of Kenya birding trip report. I thought I've read it a couple of times.
It'll be an amazing adventure. But there we go. If we have no more questions, we'll wind things down. Say this has been recorded in the next few days. By the miracle of technology, I'll get an email from the cloud, whatever the cloud is, and we'll get it sent out up and put up on YouTube as well, and the link sent out to Mark, etc., etc. So keep checking back for that information. So thank you, everybody. Good birding. Migration is close. There is light at the end of the winter tunnel. So thank you again, everybody, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Sandra.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
One of those birds was spectacular, weren't they?